Those hostages could have died, Nick.
I sent the greatest soldier in history to make sure that didn't happen.
Soldiers trust each other. That's what makes it an army. Not a bunch of guys running around shooting guns.
Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye.
My pussy's gone crazy!
When Captain America throws his mighty shield, all those who chose to oppose his shield must yield. It is led to a fight, and a duel is due, and the red and the white and the blue come through when Captain America throws his mighty shield.
Hey fam, welcome to Jae Explains. I'm Jay, the official elected official. Do me a solid. Like, sub, share, speak. I know you're saying to yourself, oh my god, another Captain Marvel video. This is overkill. Well, not from my channel. I've only said the movie would be trash in passing.
I'm not gonna fight your war. I'm gonna end it.
That's right, guys. I'm totally gonna end your war. Like, oh my god, you aliens are so annoying. Let me blow you up so I can get Daddy's Porsche to hit up the club tonight with Lance and Chad. Oh my god, your war is getting in the way of my sweet 16. I'm avoiding this movie like the frickin' plague. Don't worry, this isn't another review. Seriously, every channel on this platform has a review up, and to be honest, there's but so many words to call something bland, uninteresting, and formulaic. It's easy to trip on the retconning of the MCU, but the breaking of the continuity began with Black Panther. Actually, a lot of the universe breaking began with that flick, but I digress. Ripping into Brie Larson for being racist and sexist is a cliche unto itself at this point, and the overt feminist agenda is something they said would be in the film. Little did we know it would take the form of juvenile cockpit jokes and the character being asked to smile, but hey, I never grudge anyone for keeping to their word. What I want to discuss is the bigger picture. See, ultimately, this incarnation of the character isn't the fun, big-chested, leggy blonde that I remember from the cartoon, or the Black Maria Rambeau version that actually showed up in the film. No. This version of the character has had quite the comic history, and I'm gonna let YoungRippa 59 break it down.
Carol Danvers only recently became Captain Marvel like 6 or so years ago. Up until then, she mainly went by Miss Marvel. She never was that prominent of a character, but she was far more embraced as Miss Marvel than Captain Marvel. She has had like 7 reboots to issue number 1, and nobody is really buying her comics. Even with the release of the movie, they really overshipped a lot of the recent first and second issues, but go to any comic book store and they're hanging off of the damn rack in abundance because they were massively overshipped. Again, she was never really embraced in the first place, which is why nobody outside of comic book fans knew who she was when it was announced that she was going to be having her own movie. So she's like the 7th Captain Marvel and arguably the most disliked. But Marvel tried to force her upon everybody, and they did all that they could to set her up for success. And that's what makes Captain Marvel unique and why this is really questionable.
Thank you, Mr. YoungRippa. See, Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, oh my god, especially Hulk, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, all the mainline Avengers have existed since the 60s, with hundreds of artists and creators adding splashes and spins to each personality that has molded the fantastic characters that make the MCU into what it is. We want to see Tony and Steve reunite because over the last decade, we've watched their relationship begin and end. The relationship between these two strong characters that's been built up over 4 movies together, 9 and 7 in movies individually, and much like what took place in the comics themselves, this relationship that we are thoroughly invested in is seemingly being brushed aside to shoehorn in a Mary Sue. So, if this problem began in the comics, it's best to look at the source material. Great Tuber, the 4th Age, is about to explain who made this character, and even part of the reason why. RJ?
So, to begin with, I want to take a step back and look at the difference between this character and the other characters in the MCU, and their origins. Because they all get their origins from Marvel Comics. And I'm sure most people would probably think that since Carol Danvers has been around in one form or another for at least 50 years, then there should be no problem with this character. But that's an incorrect assumption, because there are two different kinds of characters now within the Marvel Universe. And the origin point of the difference between these kinds of characters is Captain Marvel's creation itself in 2012. This was the origin point, I would say, of the new characters for Marvel. Now, I did a video just last week or 2 weeks ago that went over a podcast that was put out by the three main creators of Captain Marvel in 2012. Those three people would be Stephen Wacker, who was the editorial driving force behind this character of Captain Marvel. You have Kelly Sue DeConnick, who was the writer of this character, and you have Sana Amanat, who took over editorial duties from Stephen Wacker and kept on putting this character out there time and time again, even though the character kept failing in comic form. But they clearly said that her name was problematic, and therefore they had to change it. Her costume was problematic, therefore they had to change it. Her history was massively problematic, therefore they basically ignore it. Her personality was problematic, and they had to change it. So if you change all of those things, if you change the character's name, if you change the character's costume, if you ignore all of the 40 years of history prior to that point, and you change the personality of the character, that is a new character, pure and simple. Prior to that, Marvel was a company that put out stories that were ultimately character-driven. And being character-driven, those characters had a very unique way of being created and actually being fleshed out. And their very unique way of this was to make their characters, as they always say at Marvel, the world outside your window. But the problem is that you have all of these people over at Marvel, and they think that all of these problems that normal people have are agenda-driven problems, when really these problems only affect about 2% of the population, and so they're making characters that only represent about 2% of the population in the real world, whereas in the Marvel world they represent 50 to 60% of the population, and that's not the world outside your window. And when you look at all of the older characters that are being used in the MCU now, from Spider-Man to Captain America to Black Widow and Hawkeye, and all of these characters that have been around for 40 or 50 years or more, they were set up and built their great stories upon this way of storytelling, upon this character-driven storytelling. And that's how Marvel became great with its storytelling.
Seriously, if you're into comics, subscribe to The Fourth Age and YoungRippa 59. They know their stuff. Captain Marvel isn't a character. It's an agenda, and where many are content with feminism being the message that's being pushed, I'm not, because feminism is only a symptom of a much worse illness, and that's communism and its better-looking big cousin socialism. I've been on the blue team for the last 5 years, officially an elected Dem for the last year, and the overall insanity, particularly here in the Garden State, has gone into overdrive, all in the name of equality. The creators of this version of Captain Marvel purposefully took all the femininity away from the character in the name of equality. Guys, how many times do I have to say it? We aren't equals. Men and women aren't the same thing, and stripping away femininity does nothing to advance a female character in literature or creative writing. In fact, it detracts because, due to the natural vaginal vulnerability of women, when she goes through hardships and we get to experience them with her, it makes the story that much more compelling. This character was never designed to be compelling because it's built around a false narrative that men and women are the exact same thing, totally equal. And the movie reinforces the idea that there's some great patriarchy tasked with keeping women oppressed, suppressed, and depressed. Here's where the two political ideologies come into play. See, equality is the main selling point of both socialism and communism, with a major difference being the government owning everything in socialism's case and the public owning everything via communism. Their point is that there should be no rich or any poor, eliminate classes and dismantle capitalism, which seems counterproductive for a megacorporation such as Disney, but Walt's been dead for a very long time. Same as with the recent passing of Stan Lee. The creators no longer have any input, and no matter what the entity is, if you're given it instead of creating it, you'll do as you please, such as stuffing all the ideas and messages in it that you want. including those who seem long since dead. I mean, we won the Cold War via Gorbachev's takeover of the Soviet Union, and since then, the rest of the world has just swag-jacked the US and gotten to getting the money. But these ideologies have persisted, so instead of being creative in ways in which to manipulate capitalism into building steps on the economic ladder, which was the original plan, those who hold on to such beliefs take the easy route and shoehorn messaging into pre-established brands and college grievance studies. Subtlety has had its day, people. Look, we're beyond fortunate every time we inhale, let alone get to live in a world where a movie universe is so beloved. You think the slaves on those ships knew what an Avenger was? To get here, it took a team effort. Thousands, maybe millions of individuals over thousands of years, some credited, most forgotten to time, contributing. Thoughts turning into ideas, turning into action by men and women, together, with endless thanks to capitalism, because if they didn't make awesome toys that could sell, then what was the point? It's about the money, or at least it should be, but Disney has all the money, so they have to use their largest platform in the universe to spread toxic ideology. Steer clear of the ideologies, gang, because there is such a thing as too far. Guys, thank you so much for putting up with it. Please, all the internet stuff. Like, sub, share, speak. What'd you think of the flick, man? Did you think there was a larger idea to tear us apart from the inside by planting false narratives and bad ideas? Y'all let me in the comments. Appreciate you. And until the next video, love.
I wanna write you a love song. Let me write you a love song.